week 2 of our Advent course for 2021. I think I'm doing well so far.
Yes.
So I hope everyone's well. Let me just get rid of that. There we go. That's better. You didn't see that, but it would have been annoying for us because we could barely see what we were doing. So, yes, hope everyone's well. It's a beautiful day after a few days of fog. Was the fog down where you live this morning? No. It wasn't here either, which is good. Oh, we actually have a number.
Oh.
Yes. We had a problem. Well, we've had problems for a few weeks, haven't we, really?
Yeah.
With the piece of software that allows us to see messages both from Facebook and from YouTube. That part, seeing the messages, works, but it also has the all-seeing eye, and that lets us know how many people are online. Apparently, there are 3 people. So oh yes, good morning, Karen. It's good to see you. So if you're already online, do say hi. We don't bite. Not even the mad rabbit thing. So we are on week 2 of 3 weeks. So and this week is called the Hospitality of Abraham. Do you want to kick it off? Or do you want to wait a few more minutes?
Well, let's wait just a few more minutes.
Well, do you want to just sort of discuss last week then? What we did last week?
Discuss.
Yes. What you said last week. Do you still have your notes?
I do.
Okay.
But it's one of those, can you remember what you did last week? Don't know.
I remember asking questions. We have 4 people now. That's good. Good morning to the 4th person who's just joined us. Please say hi to us. What impressed me more than anything is the massive trouble they go to.
They being whom?
The people who write the icons, and how it developed to this way of developing the tools, developing the paints and the colors, what they mean. Getting, is it the glue? Is it from the rabbit skin or something? Yeah. And then the stuff that's put on as a kind of plaster of whatever
gesso,
however you want to call it. I just didn't think it was that complex. Yeah. I just thought maybe canvas, and then they put a wash on it like they do, and then off you go, and maybe gold leaf and stuff.
Icon painting is very un-American in that it takes weeks, if not months, to produce an icon, and we're into the Polaroid instant picture feeling. We want it now, and that's not what an icon is about. Even the process of making or writing the icon is a process of meditation and prayer.
Yes, that's the other part as well.
Yeah.
Every part has a prayer involved. Good morning, Kit, and you are watching us on the big screen. You poor people. Your time in purgatory will be very, very short. And hello, Anne. Have to run to doctor. All right. Yes. Good. I'm glad you found it interesting. What does the lower part of your T-shirt say? It's cut off from the screen, right? So. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. This is not easy. I don't know how the people on the weather reports do this. So yes, be kind. And this is an actual photograph of a kid hugging an elephant that's sat down for her. It was one of those moments that blew up the internet, as they say. I just had... I was last week mentioned. I wonder how they make gold. What's it called?
Leaf.
And William Carruthers put a link on YouTube, which shows you an old Pathé movie of how it's done, and it is something like I thought it was. That it is kind of hammered, but it's done with bigger machines because it's kind of an industrial thing, and yet there are all these men and women, and the men are all in suits and ties, and all the women are all nicely dressed, even though they're kind of sat down doing all this very hard and very intricate manual labor. Good morning, Father Bill, and good morning, Wanda. Good to see you. So we have 7 people. Is
Shall
that
we
a
begin?
quorum?
Yes. Shall we begin? We're going to be talking about the Rublev Icon, the Hospitality of Abraham, and its transition over the years and the theological transition that was made over the years. The earliest representation of this biblical story is in the catacomb, or at least the one that people have found is in the catacomb called the Via Latina on the Latin Way. And if you'll put up that, oh, okay. I jumped ahead. Father Andrew will now recite for us.
Well, am I? Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yes.
I didn't realize I was doing that.
Yes, you're the reciter.
Okay, let us recite. We are enfolded in the Father, and we are enfolded in the Son, and we are enfolded in the Holy Spirit. And the Father is enfolded in us, and the Son is enfolded in us, and the Holy Spirit is enfolded in us. Our soul rests in God, its true peace. Our soul stands in God, its true strength, and is deep-rooted in God for endless love. Julian Unurich.
This quote just kind of captured my attention as we started, or as I started to look at this icon, because very often I think we consider art to be kind of in one sense, emotionless, in that it is something we just kind of look at and appreciate. And icons give us a kind of a concrete expression or view of the eternal realm of heaven and the goodness of creation. And again, the earliest representation of this story from Genesis 18 is a drawing on the wall of the catacomb in Via Latina, the Latin Way. And as you see, Abraham is there greeting the 3 messengers who greet him, and they all have their hands upraised in a position of greeting. This is the earliest representation we have of the story from Genesis 18. And as you note, there's nothing special about the messengers. They just seem to be 3 messengers, and Abraham seems to be kind of plain. There's no tree of the oaks of Mamre that is depicted. There's no table. There's no offering of the meal. It's just the visitors and Abraham. As people progressed with the depicting of this scene, if you look at St. Mary Major Church in Rome, if you look at the bottom, there is a picture of Abraham and Sarah presenting a meal for the 3 visitors who now have halos. It represents a change in the theological perspective of who these visitors were. And if you look at it, all the figures are kind of front-faced. They face the front. And on the table are 3 objects, 3 pieces of bread.
Looks like 3 slices of pizza to me.
Yeah.
And it is in Italy, so.
So it's got to be good pizza. And Abraham is presenting to them a dish. And it's kind of confusing because you see Abraham and Sarah kind of on the left-hand side, and Abraham's instructing Sarah to bake bread. And then there is Abraham presenting the plate of food to the three visitors who now have halos.
So those two people, it's Abraham twice, is it?
Yes, it's Abraham twice, once talking to Sarah about providing or baking the bread, and then once actually putting food on the table for...
It's like a long exposure photo gone wrong.
Yeah.
The visitors and Sarah have managed to stand still, but Abraham's moved. So you get that ghosting thing happening.
Yeah. And if you look on the top of this mosaic, I think that it's Abraham and the three visitors moving toward Sodom. And it's interesting that the central figure is encircled with kind of a nimbus, that this is a special figure. And I think they're trying to represent the text where the three visitors begin to be referred to as the Lord. And in Jewish interpretation, the Lord was the figure addressed, and the other two figures were companion angels, messengers of the Lord. Now we're going to move on to a third picture of... Go ahead. This is in the Church of San Vitale in Ravenna, and you can see that here, again, the figures are given halos, indicating they are some kind of divine messengers. And again, there's a table with 3 loaves of bread. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see a reference, I think, to Abraham on Mount Moriah, and there's the lamb that is being provided on the bottom of the page, or bottom of the picture. And then on the left-hand side, you see Abraham presenting the fatted calf to the table of the 3 visitors.
So that in the extreme right looks like Abraham's got his head on his son there. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Why has he got the stigmata? Got wounds in his feet, or the thongs? No, sorry.
They're just knots of the thongs.
This just goes to show, when you're imbibed in Christian history, when you see something, you interpret it. It's what your brain does, doesn't
Yeah.
it? And
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now these progress over centuries, and this 5th slide is a very interesting one because it has several elements that have been developed since that early catacomb painting. This mosaic shows Abraham presenting the bread to the table, and Sarah is in the house over on the right, and above the 3 visitors, who each have halos, and now they're represented with wings, is an inscription that says, Abraham ministers to angels. Now there's another inscription which I could never find a picture that captured this second inscription, but it's above the Abraham ministers to angels. And it says, Abraham receives the angels as guests, and while he sees 3, he adores 1. And we are seeing the focus of the theological focus of this icon becoming associated with the Trinity. Images, icon images seldom have one meaning. They have layers of meaning, and the first meaning is usually a factual representation of the biblical event or the person about whom the icon is being written.
Mhm.
And that is to give us a grounding in our history, our history of God's salvation. Now, the second meaning is the church's meaning seen in the factual. It is what we call now topology, where the image becomes a type or it's an Old Testament event that is understood as a type of image, an icon, a figure, a sketch of a New Testament fulfillment.
Yeah.
So it's a Christological or a Trinitarian view in terms of this icon of the visitors with Abraham. Then there is a spiritual level. And the spiritual and the topological are very closely related. But the spiritual has to do with the position of the icon in the church, its position in the liturgy, and how that amplifies the meaning of the typological meaning of the icon. Now, the typological and spiritual meanings do not exclude each other, but rather are complements of each other.
Similar to the kind of context we've been using to do our Bible study.
Yeah.
You know, the 5 contexts.
Yep.
This is the different levels of interpretive levels, the ones the factual, then you work into the allegorical and typological, etc., etc. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Now, when Rublev begins his interpretation of this scriptural passage, he has taken a great deal of time, and there are some very striking things that Rublev has done. They're very bold, and they almost circumvent the tradition that he has inherited. In his icon, he eliminates Abraham and Sarah. The reason is his reason is not to illustrate the story, but to convey the idea of the Trinity. So he has totally moved from just the portrayal of the historical biblical event and sees it now in terms of what the church has understood over a period of thousands of years. If you look at the angels, the visitors, in Rublev's painting or in Rublev's icon, they are all of equal importance. None of them is larger or more important than the other. In earlier icons of this scene, the central figure is portrayed as being bigger and actually has the indication in the nimbus inside the halo that this is Jesus Christ. And there's a significant emphasis placed on this central figure. This is a technique used in icon writing where in painting in groups of people, the Christ figure will always appear as the largest and most important. Now, the elements on the table have been reduced. The only thing that you see is maybe a bowl with the calf in it. All the other elements, the bread, loaves, and so on, are gone. And yet he keeps in the background 3 elements, each associated with a different one of the figures. Now, one is the mountain, which is very difficult to see in the reproduction of this icon. But there's a mountain that is over the right-hand figure, which is understood to be the Spirit. There is the oak of Mamre that is above the Christ figure, and there is Abraham's house. He lived in a tent, but in this icon, it's actually a stone house, and it has an open door. And the elimination of kind of superfluous elements for Rublev gives this icon a sense of peace and space. And we'll get to in just a moment that there is this circular image that is part of the artistic design of this icon, but it also has a very big theological meaning. And I found a prayer that someone composed for viewing this icon. And Father Andrew is going to read it for us.
Well, before I do, say hi to June and hi to Thomas. Glad you're with us. Lord, open my eyes that I may behold your glory. Draw me into the mystery of the Trinity, and let me be enfolded in love. This I ask in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Now, this is the Rublev icon of the hospitality of Abraham, and it's interesting because Abraham's not even in the picture.
That's why I was so confused and called it the icon of the Holy Trinity. And when I Googled it, did my research, it always came up.
Yeah. Now, this icon, or icons of the Trinity in Orthodoxy, are associated with the liturgical season of Pentecost. And the liturgical color in Orthodoxy for Pentecost is green. And Pentecost has an Old Testament origin. It is a Jewish feast that celebrates the giving of the law, and it was a thanksgiving for the fruits of the earth. And so greenery is seen as a symbol of new life the Spirit causes to grow in us. That means in this icon, that green represents that idea. If you remember from last week, the colors and their representation, or what they represent. Blue is a color of divinity and heaven. Green is youthfulness, freshness, fertility, and plant life. Red, the color of blood, is life, vitality, and beauty. Orange red, fire, fervor, spiritual purification. Brown, the color of earth and the color of poverty. White, purity, innocence, and radiance. Gold, sanctity, glory, divine life of God. Now, these colors are applied to the icon painting of this general time. I think last week I might have misrepresented this in terms that this is the history of the meaning of these colors for all icons. No, it's the meaning of colors for Russian icons of this period. So just as a kind of corrective from last week. So if you look at these icons, you can see that Rublev is the first of iconographers to use the idea of a circle as part of the artistic element of his icon writing. And I have just learned how to do this, and so my circle is going to be quite lopsided.
This is new technology for us all, so it could crash the internet. Let's see what happens.
But if you look, there is this circular movement all around these three figures. The circle for Rublev was designing or was symbolizing perfection, unity, eternity. There is no beginning and no end. In other icons of the Trinity, the figure of the Son is larger, but here we see Rublev emphasizing the equal importance of all three persons of the Trinity. And we're going to look at the individual persons as they are depicted by Rublev. If you look at the figure on the right, this figure is often described as being the Spirit. And the Spirit has on a blue tunic with that light green mantle. So you have the connection with the Orthodox feast of Pentecost and the giving of the Spirit, the new life that is going to grow into the lives of the church. Now, the Spirit has a staff, and all three figures have a staff, which is an Old Testament image of authority to be a messenger. But the Spirit, you can see his staff, the entire thing, and it comes from the blue part of his mantle down to the green part of the overlaying mantle. And it's the only staff that we see full length. And right there, it connects heaven and earth. If you look at the hand of the Spirit, it's gesticulating toward the cup in blessing. And yet it's also pointing down toward the earth. If you look at the bottom of the icon, the base of the icon is green, which means that it is seated, the icon is seated on the earth. And in Rublev's, in his vocabulary, he is saying to the viewer, this is where heaven and earth meet, where the footstool of God, where earth becomes the footstool of God. Now, if you look in the background, and this is hard to see oops, I was playing with this, and I made a big mistake. Okay. In the background, up here, there is a mountain. It's not you can't see it very well in this representation, but the mountain very probably is a depiction of Mount Moriah, where Isaac, who is the son that is being announced in this historical event, where Isaac would be offered by Abraham as a sacrifice to God, and it becomes a topological reference to the self-sacrificing love of the Son. The Spirit's hand is inclined, or the Spirit's head is inclined toward the Father. If you look, the Spirit and the Son, their heads are tilted to the right as they look at the Father. The Father is the most mysterious of the three figures. He's clothed in a blue tunic over which is a mantle of pink, brown, blue, and green, kind of an ethereal and mysterious figure. The other two figures are very boldly presented, but the Father is not. And it reminds me of Jesus' words, "No one has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father." So Jesus bridges the gap we might otherwise experience in our relationship with the Father, who is both love and mystery. The Father is responding, the Father's gaze is turned toward the other two figures. His head is not inclined, however. The Father is acknowledging the vision or the gaze of the Son and the Spirit, and he is acknowledging the other two figures as he becomes their source and their origin. And this is a basic Orthodox doctrine of the Trinity. The Father gives life to the Son and to the Spirit. The Son and the Spirit live in the eternal self-giving to the Father.
Herein lies the argument about the Nicene Creed and additions.
And then the filioque, yes, yes. Each person in this icon of the Trinity lives for the other in perfect independence. The Father blesses the cup and thereby ratifies the mission that his Son will accomplish. Above the Father's head is a house with an open door. Let me see if I can. Okay, here we go. Right here, there's this house. It's supposed to be Abraham's house. Now, Abraham lived in a tent, but here it's a stone house, and it has an open door. And this might reflect Jesus' words, "In my Father's house there are many dwelling places." I'm moving around in my text. Okay, here we go. Now, in this icon, if we look at it and draw a circle around the outside of the bodies of the three angels, there we go. And another inside, and follow the inner curve of the other icons of this picture or this event depict the three figures sitting in a line, and they gaze at the viewer. But here, the circular motion keeps our eyes moving. We don't have any place to rest. We keep seeing this circle moving round and round, and it's impossible to have a full-faced contact with any of the figures. Now, imagine this icon in 3D, that we're looking at it from the top. Now, this circle is going to look really bizarre, but if you had a circle that went in 3D around the icon from the top, you would see that it's kind of like a tabletop. It's flat, and there is an empty space in this circle. The empty space is for the viewer. And Rublev is trying to draw us into this icon, into this experience of the love that the Trinity holds for each other and is calling to share with us. The hand of Christ is kind of the central point of the icon. and he is gesticulating toward the cup in blessing. And he has two fingers, which is one of the Orthodox hand positions for blessing. Now, the Christ figure is, his underrobe is reddish brown, which could indicate that he is totally of the earth, or he is very human. And over that is a blue mantle, which shows his divinity. So in that figure, he has the nature of both humanity and divinity. And if you look at his hand, he has two fingers representing the dual nature of the incarnation.
Mm.
Above Christ figure is a tree. And this represents the oak of Memra, but it also is a topological reference to a New Testament idea. Because a tree, the tree of good and evil, was linked to our downfall, a tree is also linked with our salvation. Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyon, said in one of his writings, just as through a tree we became God's debtors, so through a tree we receive the cancellation of our debt. So you are seeing that all these figures, these elements in Rublev's icon are not accidents. They are all placed there for a particular meaning. I had when I was writing this up, I didn't get all my pages in the same order, so I'm looking for something. But again, we talked about the circular motion of the Trinity icon, but there's another physical element that I thought was very, very important. If you look, well, there's several things. One, if you look at the icon and the wings of the angels, they kind of form the beginning of a circle that is incomplete until the viewer steps into the picture. And I thought that is really quite an accomplishment to do this in an artistic way. And Rublev is inviting us to step into the enfolding love of the Trinity. Now there is another image which is very difficult for me to draw. But if you look at this image, I have a one-track mind. I have to do one thing at a time.
Oh, you mean the silence? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, the silence was my one-track brain was going, okay, now we're drawing this.
Just have a button, just have a little music while it goes on.
It's very, to me, it was just astounding to see this.
That looks like a chalice.
It is a chalice. And look who is in the chalice.
Ooh, wow.
Rublev, there is a level of meaning in this icon that has to do with the Eucharist. And that, for me at this point, I found that to be one of the most moving parts of this icon. The figure of Christ is enclosed in this chalice, and it's represented again on the table with Christ's hand gesticulating down toward it. And it reminds me of what happens when we come to receive communion on Sunday morning or any other day. We are coming face to face with Jesus the Christ, and he is inviting us to live with him in the Trinity and to live with him in a heavenly place. I just find this icon more and more intriguing. And all of this interpretation is something that when you start looking at this icon, you will probably see things, many more things about this icon. There are little elements such as this. There's down here on the bottom, there is a little odd shaped box, and art historians are not sure exactly what this means, but it is thought that perhaps it represents the place where the reservation of the sacrament in the Orthodox Church, where it resided in Russian Orthodox churches at this time. It was actually a piece of the consecrated host with a drop of the consecrated wine placed on it, and it was put into this area in the altar. And the altar area, it's difficult to see, but if you look at it and kind of figure out the geometry of it, it's a cube, and that is the type of altar that was used in the Russian Orthodox Church at the time of Rublev. There is a profound poet in the Anglican tradition, and it is his poem, Love Bade Me Welcome, is about coming and receiving communion. And when I saw this icon, I thought, this is what this poem is about. And Father Andrew will read it for us.
Love bade me welcome, yet my soul drew back, guilty of dust and sin. But quick-eyed love, observing me grow slack from my first entrance in, drew nearer to me, sweetly questioning if I lacked anything. A guest, I answered, worthy to be here. Love said, you shall be he. I, the unkind, ungrateful, my dear, I cannot look on thee. Love took my hand, and smiling did reply, who made the eyes but I? Truth, Lord, but I have marred them. Let my shame go where it doth deserve. And know you not, says love, who bore the blame? My dear, then I will serve. You must sit down, says love, and taste my meat. So I did sit and eat.
If you have any questions, comments, or observations, hit that question mark and let us know that something is coming.
Anne did leave a question. Gotta run, but question. Does this picture portray author's shade of blue, parenthesis, intense, here? I'm not so
That
sure that means.
I think that this particular photograph intensifies the blue a bit.
I mean, the green's a bit washed out, isn't it?
Yeah. The color contrast, it's very difficult to take a picture of a
Copy.
copy. But if you think about the age of this icon, it has been reworked many times. At one point, it actually had the Russian Orthodox gilded or silver cover that covered most of the icon with only the faces revealed. And this was because the icon was being damaged by smoke from oil lamps and incense. And it wasn't until the beginning of the 20th century that art historians and art restorers figured out how they could clean the icon and not damage it. And that's when the covering, that silver covering, was taken off, and a lot of work was done of restoration. But over the years, it has been repainted, restored, repainted again. And so the colors are not nearly as vivid on the original as they would have been for Rublev's first viewers. And in fact, the entire background had been done in gold leaf. And so that is no longer even on the icon.
Is that why you can see the kind of patterning of the canvas behind it?
Yeah, yeah.
Father Bill's put a question mark out there, so we can wait for his question to load. Thank you once again, Father, for this. It's been incredibly interesting. And
typology.
Typology, yeah. Topology is map making, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's typology, the type of types. The one thing you mentioned, I don't know whether you did it in jest or it has been queried, but where that little box is, you mentioned there could have been a mirror there at some time.
There's speculation, and I only saw this in one reference, that there is glue inside that little box. And one art historian thought perhaps there was a mirror that had been applied to the icon that would draw the viewer into the icon itself.
I love the idea, but I also think it's kind of against, because it would make you important.
Yeah. That was just something I read, kind of a side reference, a rabbit hole I chose not to go down.
But I remembered it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Oh dear, I'm sorry. Yes, it's all those different
and it's very
shapes and
20th
stuff.
century individualistic kind of ideas about me.
Well, you'd be just, it's kind of narcissistic as well, because I think you'd be more interested in saying, "Ooh, I'm in this picture," rather than I'm drawn into this picture because of the beauty of and the love of the Trinity. You're right. It becomes less religious and becomes a piece of a decor, doesn't it? That I choose to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments or observations? Oh, there will be a test.
Let me put the last slide up then. That has us on it. Real people. Well, even that's debatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, when you look at the icon, you the colors. we're so used to vivid colors now. I mean, we have screens that do billions upon billions of colors, and we can't even see most of them.
Yeah.
And we kind of forget the age of things, and a lot of restoration work is repair rather than just making it so it doesn't fall to pieces, rather than making it look.
Yeah.
But there was a time when somebody would have repainted the whole thing, like they tried to rebuild some of the ruins. But now they just put infill, put bricks in and stuff, don't they, just to make sure it's
Where you can see the original and the restoration.
Yeah, they make it.
Now
make a point
this
of it.
icon was commissioned for a monastery dedicated to the Trinity, and it is now in a museum in St. Petersburg. It's not in its original setting. There is a copy of Rublev's icon in the monastery in its original position, but the original is no longer in the monastery, and it was moved and stored in the museum because they were concerned about the atmospheric conditions, moisture, light exposure, and so on, because it is a very, very fragile piece now, and so it's being housed in a museum. Now, what does Kit say?
So can you put up the image again, the icon again? It will help us contemplate it. So I'll put it back up.
Yeah. Okay. It's it's available. Copies of this icon are available on Amazon. It sounds like a commercial.
But if you do Amazon Smile with St. Clements, we do get something.
Yeah, we do get something from it. So if you're interested, if it's something that you want to,
And how tall is it? It's about.
well, they have them on different sizes.
What's the original size then?
The original size is very large.
Oh, okay.
It's because it was attached to an iconostasis, the screen that separates the congregation from the altar area in an Orthodox church. And it's interesting that in the traditional way in which icons appear on the iconostasis, there is a door.
Do you want to explain what an iconostasis is?
The iconostasis is a big screen that divides the congregation from the altar area in an Orthodox church, and it has icons painted on it. And the traditional way in which icons are presented, there is a door in the center, which is called the royal door, and if you're facing the door, to the right is usually an icon of Christ, usually the Pentecrator. And then to the left is the Blessed Virgin. And then to the Blessed Virgin's left again is usually another, those are the two that we're going to talk about. In this monastery, where the icon of Christ would have been to the right of the royal doors, that's where this Trinity icon was painted.
So it's a big thing.
It's a really big work.
I assumed the one I have was the actual size, because I was sorely disappointed when I went to the Louvre and saw the Mona Lisa and thought, wow, I'm either a long way away from it or that's tiny.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be tiny. So
no, it's quite large. I mean, for an icon, it's very, very large.
Kit asks the question, what are their feet sitting on?
There's a platform. And to me, it just seems like that verse from the Psalms where earth is God's seat. Heaven is God's seat and earth is his footstool.
Oh, yes.
says, looking at these three figures, it seems that they could be either men or women. Is that intentional? It is. The intent was that they would be sexless. They are not men and they are not women. They represent God, who is neither male nor female. Now, the incarnated Word became a man, but that's as far as we can go, as far as we can say. But it was intentional on Rublev's part to make them ambiguous. Any other questions, comments, observations? There's crickets. Just hear crickets.
That again, that little central box below the chalice. For some reason, that just intrigues me because it also reminds me of some kind of Chinese puzzle. You can press that and something will pop out somewhere. It's not being facetious. It's just it really. I don't know why.
It was also some of the historians thought that perhaps it was a representation of the place where relics of saints was placed in the altar.
Isn't it still the case that in Orthodox churches every altar has to have some kind of relic in it, or they carry around their own little
reliquary
plate or something which says something? So whenever they place it on a table, that becomes an altar by the fact that it's got a holy thing within it.
I know that the altar stone is the interesting or the important element in Orthodox theology. The Eucharist can never be celebrated twice at the same altar.
What?
On the same day.
Because theology. And in order to get around this, when you need multiple celebrations, the altar stone is taken off the main altar and put on some other altar or table. Which renews the altar.
And then they celebrate there.
Gosh. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Father. That's been fascinating once again. What will next week bring?
We're going to look at praying with icons. Oh, Kit's got another question. Good.
In the medieval age, she would be called Kit the Questioner.
The Questioner. How many icons can dance on the head of a pin?
Only one at a time, apparently.
Only one at a time. This just kind of went through my mind. Icons were intended to be used in churches, principally in churches. Only secondarily were they used in private prayer away from the church.
Would that be a wealthy family having someone paint an icon for them, or how would that work?
Most Orthodox families have icons either that have been handed down from generation to generation, or ones that they have purchased, and I think the idea was that you bring an element of worship into your home, and I think it's much like what we do in Western Christianity. A crucifix is basically an element of decoration or representation in a church of worship. And secondarily, is it used in a house? And I think that's the kind of the distinction they make. I find the colors of their garments intriguing. In particular, the Father seems to embrace the entire color wheel. Yeah, I think that was Rublev's idea, that the figure of the Father is all-encompassing and also somewhat mysterious. You can't really say that mantle is such and such a color. I just now thought of one thing that I had meant to mention, but forgot to do so. If you look at the Son and the Spirit, their over mantles leave one hand free. In the Son, it's his right hand. In the Spirit, it's the left hand. And Bishop Irenaeus said that the Son and the Spirit were the hands of God that he used to work his will in the world. And here you see the arms, the hands free from constraint.
Mm.
Did we answer your question, Kit?
We'll now find out how long the delay is.
I know.
It's kind of intriguing, isn't it? That we are in the past from them.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. Well, next week is going to be praying with icons.
Ooh.
How to perhaps incorporate icons into personal prayer and how to use them.
Well, thank you once again.
Thank you for putting up with all my jabbering.
Well, it makes a refreshing change to hear all mine. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, and that you have a great week. Hopefully we'll see you on Sunday at church. If not, hopefully you'll see us online when we're at church. Gosh, this is so complicated. So take care and God bless.